Here we go.
So last week I got an inbox from a brother on Facebook. And by the way, if you have any stories you'd like me to cover, send me a message or a DM on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I even have a Facebook group where you can come and leave a comment, as well as suggestions. But he writes,
So I'm watching episode 5 of Marvel's Secret Invasion, and at the 1750 mark, one of the characters takes a subtle shot at men, the manosphere, and male podcasters. She said, quote, "The males in my species are very similar. If they're not busy gaslighting you, they're threatening you. That's what all podcasts are about."
What kind of shit is that?
Now I couldn't believe it, so I had to go look it up myself, and sure enough, yeah, they definitely took a shot at the manosphere.
Let us go, or I'll kill her.
Oh, I don't doubt you for a moment. The males in my species are very similar. If they're not busy gaslighting you, they're threatening you with murder. That's what all the podcasts are about.
Now this without context seems benign, but when you put it in the context of everything else that's been going on, it stands out like a sore thumb, because this is the 5th time I've seen this in the mainstream media, and the 2nd time I've seen Disney do this. First there was the She-Hulk, which was nothing short of a monologue against the male fan base, who they deemed toxic fanboys of the MCU. The people that worked on that project used it as a platform to voice their anger and frustration towards men. It was a multi-episode diss track, because the bad guys in that series were not supervillains. It was a group called Intelligentsia, which was a mockery of the RP community, podcasters and content creators. And they portrayed them as a bunch of angry, misogynist men who'd meet online in groups to complain about women. And they were enemies of the She-Hulk for no reason other than the fact that she was a woman. Now, if you want to hear more about that, check out this video. Then we had the article in Elle magazine, which was an unflattering look at what we do here in this space. After that, we had the 2022 election in Georgia, where Democrat candidate Stacey Abrams and her surrogates, MSNBC host Tiffany Cross, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, and Professor Brittany Cooper tried to shame black men into voting for Abrams in the state's governor's race, after polling suggested that she was going to lose because black men were not going to turn out for her. They said we, black men, were victims of disinformation.
And unfortunately this year, black men have been a very targeted population for misinformation. Not misinformation about what they want, but about why they want what they deserve.
And I think that Stacey is spot on with that. I listen as my kids watch NBA highlights and whatever else they watch on YouTube. I hear the misinformation being typed in. My 12-year-old, my 14-year-old son, my 20-year-old is getting it. So there is definitely a target toward African-American men.
We need to think robustly, just for instance, about the demon of disinformation. Foaming at the mouth, rapidly spouting anti-Semitic, anti-black, anti-feminist, anti-factual statements. We need to talk about the demon of disinformation that has black male voters in Georgia willing to support Raphael Warnock, but not Stacey Abrams.
Tiffany Cross even went as far as to blame Kevin Samuels and Tariq Nasheed as the reason why black men were not willing to support Abrams, and telling us to, quote, get in line with black women.
I will say, a lot of black men sometimes feel like they're ignored or they're put down, particularly sometimes even by black women in the media. So this is not that. But I do hear Roland's point that felt ignored. But you feel ignored and then you go over to the other side. The oppressed feel oppressed. So then you go and try to align with the oppressor. So I'm not putting black men down, but sometimes it's like, well, some of you Kevin Samuels following Tariq Nasheed quoting people, please look at the truth and see what's happening and get in line with some of the black women.
Shut up. I did a video on that topic as well. Please check it out, it's some of my best work. Then there was the film Don't Worry Darling, which was directed by Olivia Wilde, which she used as propaganda against Professor Jordan Peterson, whom she labeled as the leader of the angry incel movement. And we've also seen reports from the FBI labeling the language used by male podcasters as hate speech. And just a few months ago, there was The Power, an Amazon series about what the world would look like if women held a physical advantage over men. And similar to the She-Hulk, it too featured a group of online misogynists called Urban Docs, who used a lot of the talking points that you often hear in this space, but they used them to justify violence against women, which is something none of us has done. And if you want to hear more about that series, please check out this collaboration I did with Dr. Tia-San Johnson. So I bring up all those examples to say the media as well as the US government is well aware of this community, and they've declared war. because they see it as a problem. 63% of men under age 30 are electively single. Male virginity is at an all-time high. And fewer men are willing to accept the role of being a stepfather. And the passport bros are a thing now. So men, particularly young men, have gotten up from the table. They are disengaging from Western women. Now, the gynocrats would say, it's the fault of these podcasters and content creators who advocate for men. They claim they're teaching young men to hate women or to live independent from them. But I would argue it's their fault. The gynocrats, the effeminists, and the modern women. Because what you see men doing, or young men doing specifically, is a reaction to what's been going on for decades, as men have been suffering through this in silence. You see, in the past, men would simply isolate themselves or self-medicate with alcohol or narcotics. If they said anything, it would be amongst themselves, in male-dominated spaces like the barbershop, locker rooms, or their man caves. So none of the concerns that you're here being voiced by these male podcasters and content creators who advocate for men are anything new. The only difference is social media has given men a platform to voice their frustrations to the world, allowing people outside of male-dominated spaces to hear what we've been saying for decades. And the difference is, particularly when it comes to the younger generations, they're not willing to tolerate the stuff their fathers and grandfathers put up with.
And then, on your own accord, you can leave me, okay?
So you're gonna leave and I can leave after you leave? I just have to leave?
We're gonna leave, no, we're gonna leave with you. We're gonna leave together. Okay. You definitely have to leave today, okay?
Got you.
So what we'll do now, go inside, get some of your things.
You need this back?
What's that?
This.
Nope, that's for you.
This is me.
Yep.
This is me. That's officer and that's officer. Can I see your eyes, please? Is that okay? All right.
My wife filed a false abuse claim against me in order to initiate a divorce, in order to get an advantage over the property that we have. Out of nowhere, she just filed a false abuse claim against me and had me evicted from the house.
They're refusing to associate with women under the current terms. Some are demanding change while others have become indifferent. But my point is, without feminism, this would not exist. But of course, that isn't the way the media sees it. They think everything was fine until recently. They think men being dissatisfied with women is a new phenomenon. That men were happy with the way things were going up until a few years ago. Because they're clueless to what men have been going through. Because society never considers what men go through. In their minds, men are just automatons. We're just supposed to man up and deal with it, the way our fathers and grandfathers did. And since that's no longer happening, the media is ringing the alarm. They want the public to know men are walking away. And that's why they don't want us coming online and airing our grievances, comparing notes and developing strategy. Because this entire movement, this manosphere, this pro-masculinist, traditional values, or pro-male advocacy, or RP community, whatever you want to call it, is a disruption to the gynocentric social structure that has become mainstream within American culture. They want to put it to an end, and whether or not they're successful depends on how those within the space, be they content creators, podcasters, or listeners, respond to what they're doing. Here's what I mean. Remember the Tea Party movement? They had a ton of success from 2009 through 2012. They were able to purge the GOP of the politicians they didn't like, and they were the reason why the GOP gained control of the Congress in 2010, and they appeared to be unstoppable. All you had to do to get elected during that time was declare yourself to be a Tea Party member, or get the endorsement of a major Tea Party group. But the movement collapsed shortly after the 2012 election. And by 2014, nobody was talking about them, and by 2016, it was officially dead. It died because they didn't control their image. You see, the Tea Party was not centrally controlled, nor was there an official membership charter or chain of leadership. No one was there to oversee the movement. It was just a loose association of voters with a common cause. It was regional. There were dozens of leaders across the country with their own agendas. And because there was no official leadership or structure, that led to a lot of bad actors coming into their space. You had supremacists and conspiracy nuts starting to show up, and they began calling themselves Tea Party leaders and candidates. They also had a problem with grifters and scammers, people that had no real political ambition or motivation to implement change. They were simply there to make a dollar. But the worst of all were those idiots showing up to their rallies in colonial regalia. They used to wear these tricorner hats with tea bags dangling over their face. And they would shout these slogans in 18th century English gibberish, acting as if they were soldiers marching in the Revolutionary War against the British. And while it looked good to them, they looked like clowns and buffoons to everyone else. And the media, who opposed them, took all of those images of bad actors, the supremacists, conspiracy theorists, scammers, grifters, and colonial cosplayers, and made them the face of the movement. And they said to America, see, we told you these Tea Party people were dangerous. We told you they were a bunch of crazies. And it worked. The movement died after 3 years, even though it was effective, and even though those bad actors were a fraction of its members, it was enough to destroy their image. And it couldn't overcome the media taking the worst elements of their movement and making it the face of everything they stood for. So why did I tell you that story? Why did I go over what happened to the Tea Party? Well, I believe the same tactics that the media used to take down the Tea Party will be used again. Except this time, it will be used on those content creators and podcasters who advocate for men. They're going to look for the worst representation of who we are and appoint them as the titular heads of our movement, the manosphere movement, the pro-masculine movement, the RP community, or whatever you want to call it. And they're going to use these poor representatives as the poster child for why this content doesn't belong on social media. And it's all Kevin Samuels' fault.
What? That doesn't make sense.
Now I know that sounds crazy, but please hear me out. You see, the good thing about Kevin Samuels is that he was able to bring the concerns of men into the mainstream. And he did so in a manner that was palatable to women. And that's what made him so great. Even though his opinions were strong, provocative, and controversial, they didn't foment hatred towards women. To the contrary, women were his greatest supporters. They were his greatest allies. Because he advocated for reconciliation between men and women, and encouraged both to be better, so they could build strong families and a strong community. Only a misandrist or an effeminist would oppose his message. So overall, he was a great representative, the perfect representative, and it made him a household name. The bad thing about Kevin Samuels is that he unintentionally created a template for success. Through no fault of his own, he showed people how to get rich off of producing this type of content. And so within the past few years, particularly since his passing, we've seen an explosion of grifters and charismatic con artists trying to fill the void created in his absence. But these grifters and con artists are nothing like Kevin because they don't share his goals or ambitions. Their primary motivation is to replicate his success, to make the kind of money he was making, because they see this entire movement as a hustle, something they can exploit. And they're a poor representation of what this entire movement is about. Again, I'm gonna date myself, but I remember when daytime talk shows were a thing, when we had hosts like Donahue, Oprah, Sally Jesse Raphael, who were having serious conversations about current topics in the news. But shortly after them, we had these ringmasters that saw the whole thing as something to exploit. And we started to see people like Morton Downey Jr., which laid the foundation for people like Jerry Springer. Maury Povich.
Pete, you are not.
And Jenny Jones.
Who's calling you in the middle of a show?
It's actually his horse. He wants his face back.
And their shows were nothing short of a spectacle, where all of those serious conversations that were initially being had on these shows were reduced to people fighting on the air, because they didn't see daytime talk shows as something to be taken serious. They simply saw it as entertainment, thus bastardizing the genre. And so these con artists, these grifters, these shock jocks and trigger marketers that we currently have in the manosphere space are no different. They've picked up our talking points and turned them into a low-brow echo chamber of sophomoric rants, because their only ambition is to go viral, just so they can get more views, subscriptions, more memberships, super chats, cash apps, and PayPal deposits. But there's no substance to what they're saying. They speak with no depth of knowledge or understanding, because they're not trying to fix anything. Their motivation is money alone. And the worst part about these idiots is they're highly effective at what they do. Again, they have a lot of subscribers because they go viral often, not because they've said anything smart or contributed anything intelligent to the discussion. They're more infamous than famous, as people by the millions subscribe just to see what dumb thing they'll say next. And that's caused them to gain the attention of a lot of outside forces who want to shut this type of content down. Going back to the Tea Party example, they are the worst element of what this movement is about, and the media, which is the opposition, has already begun the process of appointing them as the face of it all. Just like they did with the crazies in the Tea Party, they're using them to say, see, we told you this pro-masculine content was bad. Because every time you have these con artists, these grifters, these shock jocks, these trigger marketers, every time they upload a video or go live, they give the media, the opposition, exactly what they're looking for. The evidence YouTube needs to pull the plug. That's the danger of watching their content, liking and sharing and subscribing to what they do. Because to outsiders looking in, they appear to be leading the movement. Now, I can feel some people listening to this and saying, that doesn't matter to me because I'm not in the manosphere. I don't watch manosphere content, and I wouldn't consider myself a manosphere content creator either. So I understand the sentiment, but the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter what you say, because you are included in this whether you like it or not. Going back to what I referenced earlier, the FBI is monitoring this entire space, and they don't care how you label yourself. You don't have to be a card-carrying member for them to put you in this category, because they're focused on the content you produce, your subject matter, and the language you use, and whom you affiliate with. For example, I saw Oppenheimer this past weekend. Excellent movie, I did a review on it, please be sure to check it out. But it's a great story about the man who created the atom bomb, the bomb that was used to end the war with Japan. And initially, he was regarded as an American hero. He made the cover of Time magazine, until he was under investigation for being a communist spy. And it cost him his career as well as his reputation. He went from being an American hero to an enemy of the state. And the worst part about it is, he wasn't even a member of the Communist Party, but he associated with communists, attended their rallies, and often repeated their talking points. So you see where I'm going here? And that was enough for the FBI, the same government agency that's monitoring this space and labeled the content we speak about as hate speech, to label Oppenheimer as a communist. So what I'm saying is, the same applies to you. You can say you're not RP, you can say you're not Manosphere all you want, but the FBI says that you are because of your affiliations and because of the language you use. And if they say you're a part of it, you're a part of it, regardless of what you say to the contrary. There's no getting out of this, gang. You're stuck. So this affects you too. So what's the solution? Well, if you're a layperson like me, a guy in the audience, when it comes to the grifters, the con artists, the shock jocks, and trigger marketers, you have to disassociate from them. Stop subscribing to their pages, stop watching their content, and support those channels that don't engage in their buffoonery. Because when it comes to deciding who represents this pro-masculine movement, outsiders don't know who's real and who's faking it, who genuinely cares and who doesn't, because they don't consider what's being said in these videos. They simply look at the subscriber count. They go by who has the largest audience, and they declare them to being the leaders. And like I said earlier, the trigger marketers, the shock jocks, the con men and grifters, they excel at getting attention. Now, I personally hope that my channel is one of those channels that you perceive as an honest instrument for change. And if you are a subscriber, I assume that you believe that I am. So let's get the word out. If you like what I do here, share the links to my videos on social media platforms. And when you do, be sure to tag me in those posts. And while I have you here, please be sure to check out the rest of my content. I'm sure there's something there you may enjoy. Here's a preview of my latest work. But what we haven't seen is anyone adapting a new relevant manga or anime series. No one has been able to get their hands on a Black Clover, Fire Force, or Dr. Stone, for example. And that's because the Japanese take pride in their work. They aren't keen on seeing it denigrated by some woke American idiot filmmaker. For example, could you imagine how Disney would butcher the Dragon Ball franchise? They'd race, gender swap, rainbow, and Mary Sue the hell out of that IP. I have nightmares about what they do to Piccolo, an uber-masculine father figure whose character design is eerily similar to that of a black Moor, a black masculine man. They'd have a field day with him. Because Piccolo doesn't have a wife, his species reproduces asexually. Disney would take that as an indicator of him being a member of the trans community. They'd take the father-son relationship he has with Gohan and turn it into a rainbow romance. But getting back to my point, which studio's producing an anime with DC comic book characters? And that's it. That's all I have to say about it. What do you have to say about it? Leave a comment in the comment section and let's have a conversation. Okay, so you've heard me say this a million times. So if you like this video, please give it a like and leave a comment in the comments section and share the link on your social media platforms. And if you are new to my channel, please subscribe and turn on that notification bell. That way you'll get alerts every time I upload new content. This is the Laymans Journal. Thanks for stopping by. I'm out.
Hell! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
And while I do appreciate you sharing, subbing, and leaving comments, I'm going to ask that you take another step further in keeping the channel going. I set up a membership plan for those of you who would like to offer further support in the development of this channel. It's not anything expensive or special, I'm just asking for 99 cents a month, which is enough for me to continue doing the work that I do here.
Help me! Help me! Nigga! Help me!
In the future, there will be additional tiers with added benefits, but for right now, I just need your support so that I can cover basic costs. So please, sign up so I can continue bringing you awesome content. This is the Laymans Journal. I'm out.